Let me say something that might catch you off guard. Most men who think they have erectile dysfunction are reacting to the wrong problem. Not because they don't know better or they're in denial, but because the meaning that they have attached to erectile dysfunction is heavier than the condition itself. Here's what I mean. The moment something doesn't work the way it used to, the mind fills the blank fast. This is ED. This is permanent. This is who I am from now on. And once that story takes hold, everything that follows gets harder. Not just erection, confidence, desire, initiation, even how you walk into the room. This is why men can have the same physical experience and end up in completely different places. One simply shrugs it off, the other spirals. The difference isn't the penis, it's the meaning. If you ever found yourself wondering whether erectile dysfunction says something about who you are, this conversation matters. By the time a man clicks on a video like this, he usually isn't looking for definition, he's looking for relief. Relief from question that's been looping quietly in his head. What does this actually mean? Because erectile dysfunction doesn't show up as a medical term first, it shows up as a moment. A night that didn't go the way you expected, a body that hesitated, a confidence hit you didn't see coming. Before anyone explains anything, the mind already decides what that moment means. This video isn't about fixing erections, it's about fixing the story that gets built around them. Because when the story is wrong, everything you do next is aimed at the wrong target. Most men don't meet erectile dysfunction as a condition, they meet it as a verdict about masculinity, a verdict about whether they're still that guy, and it usually sounds something like this: I shouldn't be dealing with this yet. This isn't normal. Something must be wrong with me. That meaning forms fast, often before the experience even finishes. I see this all the time. Men don't say, I'm noticing changes in erectile function. They say, I think I'm broken. I think this is the beginning of the end. I think I've lost something. That's not erectile dysfunction talking, that's fear filling in the gaps. And once that meaning settles in, it changes how men show up to intimacy. They start scanning their body. They start preparing for disappointment. They start treating sex like a test they might fail. Not because anything has been diagnosed, but because the story has already been written. This is why erectile dysfunction feels so heavy, not because of what it is physiologically, but because of what men think it says about them. That equation gets internalized quietly. No one teaches men how erections actually work in real life. No one talks about pressure, context, or expectation. So when something changes, the mind reaches for the hardest explanation available. And here's the problem. If you're reacting to erectile dysfunction as a personal failure, every move you make next adds pressure. You try harder, you monitor more, you care more than ever, which is exactly the opposite of what the body responds to. Before we go any further, let me ground this. If you want to orient yourself before jumping to conclusions, the Ultimate Vitality Check, link down below, can help you clarify which system is most involved for you right now. Not to label you, to slow the story down. Because if the meaning you're carrying about erectile dysfunction is wrong, then everything you are about to do is aimed at fixing something that isn't actually the problem. And that's why the next thing we need to talk about is what erectile dysfunction actually is. Once you strip away the story, erectile dysfunction looks very different. It's not a verdict, it's not a sentence, and it's definitely not an identity. Erectile dysfunction is a pattern. That word matters. Not a moment, not a bad night, not even a handful of frustrating experiences. A pattern in how your body responds when something is asked of it. This is where a lot of men get confused. They notice erection still happening sometimes. They might show up easily when you're alone, or when there's no pressure, or when nothing is at stake. So the mind tries to make sense of it. If it works sometimes, I can't really have AD. If it doesn't work with a partner, it must be psychological. If it's inconsistent, maybe I'm just in my head. None of these explanations actually help. What matters isn't whether erections ever happen. What matters is how reliably they happen in situations where intimacy carries weight. That's the part no one explains. Erectile dysfunction in real life is about reliability under pressure. Can your body stay responsive when there's expectation, when there's closeness, when there's something to lose? That's a very different question than can I get hard at all? Once you see that, a lot of things start to line up. Men who say, I'm fine by my own, I'm fine sometimes, I don't understand why it just disappears, they're not broken. Their body is responding to context, pressure, monitoring, expectation, emotional safety, fatigue, stress, often more than one at the same time. Here's the quiet truth. The body is always prioritizing something. When it senses ease and safety, sexual response flows. When it senses evaluation or threat, it shifts gears. That's not weakness, that's biology doing its job. This is where I like to put my medicine hat on for just a second. Erections are not a priority-based function, they are a permission-based function. When the nervous system feels watched or tested, it reallocates energy elsewhere, not because something is wrong, but because something feels important. And this is the moment a lot of men feel relief, because if erectile dysfunction is a pattern, not a personal flaw, then it's something that you can understand. And what you can understand, you can work with, not by forcing it, not by chasing certainty, but by changing the conditions the body is responding to. This is why men who come in saying, I just want it fixed, often leave with a different question. They stop asking, how do I control my erection? And start asking, what keeps putting my body under pressure? That shift changes everything. If you want a structured way to understand how pressure, anxiety, and expectation interfere with erection, the Free Heart Truth Masterclass walks through this step by step. No solution yet, just clarity. Because once you see erectile dysfunction as a pattern in context, not a definition of who you are, the panic loses its grip. And that brings us to the part that keeps men stuck the longest. Not what erectile dysfunction is, but what men are convinced it must mean. Here's where most men get trapped. Not by the erectile dysfunction itself, but by the assumptions that get layered on top of it. Erectile dysfunction is not a single bad night. One night doesn't define anything. Neither does two. What turns moments into problem is the meaning that gets attached to them. ED is not a lack of attraction, and this one messes with men the most. They think, if I want her, my body should follow. So when it doesn't, the conclusion feels personal. Something must be wrong with my desire, or with the relationship, or with me. But attraction and arousal are not the same system. You can want someone deeply and still have a body that hesitates. The moment pressure enters, that doesn't mean desire is gone. It means something else has taken priority. Erectile dysfunction is not weakness. Men often tell themselves, I should be tougher than this. I should be more confident. I should just relax, as if grit alone overrides stress, expectation, or emotional weight. But erections don't respond to toughness. They respond to safety. And the men who struggle most are often the ones who care the most about doing things well. ED is not inevitable decline. Yes, bodies changes with age. That's real, but erectile dysfunction is not a guaranteed outcome of getting older. What matters more is how stress is carried, how intimacy is approached, and how long the body has been operating under pressure. Many men assume they are sliding downhill, when in reality, they're stuck in a pattern that hasn't been questioned yet. And ED is not something you fix by trying harder. This is where things usually spiral. Trying harder means monitoring more. Monitoring creates pressure. Pressure tells the body something important is at stake. And once body feels tested, it's often pulled away. That's why so many men say, the more I focus on it, the worse it gets. They're not imagining that this is where everything connects. The bad phase, the inconsistency, the attraction that's still there, and the erection that don't always follow. Most men treat these as separate problems. If you want to orient yourself before jumping into conclusions, the ultimate vitality check below can help you clarify which system is more involved for you right now. But here's the piece most men are still missing. Even when attraction is strong, even when desire hasn't changed, erections can still disappear the moment pressure enters. That doesn't make sense until you understand what's actually happening underneath. And until you see that clearly, it's very easy to keep blaming yourself or chasing the wrong fix. That's why you need to know why you can get hard even when you are attracted. Because with that, you can feel the missing piece. That's why you need to see my next video where I break down why you can't get hard even when you're attracted, because that explanation fills in the missing piece that this whole conversation depends on. Once that clicks, the story most men have been telling themselves starts to fall apart. And when that story changes, the path forward changes with it. I'll see you there.